Cats, Cops, and C4. All right, you maniacs. Today we have a slight update to the rules and a few gentle reminders, the drill sergeant says near the end of the third shift's lunch hour. Rules? Gabriella asks out loud. Oh, nothing serious. Far from it, actually. Private Stream, their escort into the bowels of the Dauntless, stated. How far? Amy asked. It's technically a joke. This is a reminder that all explosives that make use of fluorine as a component remain under the label of no. Furthermore, the boys in the chem lab have stated, and I quote, the next request for chlorine trifluoride will be met with a crowbar and not just from Dr. Freeman. The sergeant reads out and there's a roll of laughter. Amy asks. Chlorine trifluoride is a highly toxic explosive, so reactive it sets glass on fire and very, very hard to safely store. And Dr. Freeman? Poor man shares his last name with a doctor from a popular video game series. It would look primitive with your technology, but not long ago it was considered cutting edge. And the mentioned crowbar? Gabriella asked. Melee weapon in the game, Private Stream answers. Also, apparently many of you are still adjusting to the fact that the gender expectations are reversed when they're not completely beyond human norms or experiences. Therefore, your shenanigans with prostitutes, strippers, exotic dancers, or other such workers are not going to end the way you expect. Seriously, guys, the women here want it more than you do. Just say yes while on your free time. The sergeant states and Gabriella gives Private Stream a dirty look. You wanted the safest place, the only child-friendly place is off ship and is being reinforced still. And that is? A nursery, Private Stream answers. Hey, over there, a voice says, and they turn to see a very young man on approach. He's roughly the same height as Private Stream and salutes them with a can of some kind of drink called cola. He sits right next to Private Stream. So how's my little routine fitting you? Pretty good, sir. Excuse me, who are you? Gabriella asks and receives a formal salute. Agent Herbert Jameson at your service, ma'am. I'm the creator of the Private Stream persona and one of the go-to field agents for the intelligence division. I'm next on your protection detail while you're on the Dauntless. I thought Cenk was on bodyguard duties. He's caught up fighting off assassins, which while important is still something that leaves you somewhat unprotected, Herbert says. Also, I think someone's messing with me. How so? I have over 100 children, so maybe they think this is prepping me to deal with the inevitable wear I'm going to have to wage with the teenagers, he says with a chuckle. You're a father? Amy asks him. Many times over. What makes a father? What makes someone, never mind, Amy asks him, and he tilts his head as he considers. Well, a good one supports, teaches, and protects. At the heart of it, those are the duties. It's a duty? Duties aren't bad things. They give us purpose. When I'm done protecting you, I got an hour of paperwork to sort out, and then I'm heading home to play with hundreds of adorable little gurglers. Each one a gigantic pain in the butt to keep happy, healthy, and safe, and each one I'd wage war against nations for. Back on topic, Amy says. We have a topic? Private Stream asks. What does it mean to be or have a father? Amy asks, and everyone else at the table goes still. What the? A man the next table over asks as he leans closer. Did you just ask what it means to have a... Who doesn't have a dad? I'm a clone. It hasn't even been 3 months since I woke up, she says. I see, the man says before turning around, and then Herbert grabs him by the knee and keeps him turning. What it means to have a father is that you have someone who is willing to guide and guard you. The care you get from a father is distinct and different from that of a mother, and in the wider galaxy, due to its lack of men, has a lack of fathers. I don't have a mother either, Amy says, looking down, and Herbert snaps his fingers in her face to get her to look up. Admitting defeat is the first and usually final step to actually being beaten. No surrendering now. He says, and she blinks at him. Now you want parents, do you? Why? What do you mean, why? I do mean exactly what I have asked. Why? What do you know? She asks in a sudden peak of petulance, and he rolls his eyes. I know that there are entire demographics of clones and synths that have never had parents. We have people that have been held in stasis for so long that they have nothing resembling living relatives and far, far more. A young clone with downloaded education is nothing odd or new. That's what I know, Herbert says. Of course, if you want to just complain about your situation rather than looking to improve it, that's an option too. A bad one. What? No, Amy begins before Gabriella pulls her close and gives Herbert a hard glare. Looks like you've got some kind of parent at any rate, Herbert says with a smile. Now, normally a father figure is in a relationship with the mother figure. Please stop, Gabriella states. What? You don't like the idea of Cenk? And here I thought we undaunted men were universal catches. You're universally insane, Gabriella states. Is the hot crazy scale in effect? Private Stream asks with a big smile. The what? The strange effect where a lot of attractive people are also completely bonkers freaking yonkers, Private Stream asks, and Gabriella just points to the drill sergeant who's still going down the list. Do not order your drinks with extra date rape drugs. I don't care that you're functionally immune to industrial quantities of the stuff. It's still sending the wrong message. The drill sergeant barks out, and there is a gale of laughter in response. So is that a yes? Herbert asks. It is. Okay, so we know she finds us good looking at least, Herbert says, nudging Private Stream, who nudges him back in response. That is so not the point, and you know it. I know. I'm just making conversation while we're safe and sound. This doesn't feel safe, Gabriella states with a huff. Really? You're surrounded by an army of super soldiers and in a location they will defend fiercely at the drop of a hat. You'd need nuclear blasts to crack this place open, and they'd need to be completely unexpected, as the shields on this ship have been upgraded hard enough to defend against that kind of earth-shattering force, Herbert says. Yes, it's rowdy, it's rambunctious, but that would work against any spy or assassin more than for them. Well, I'm sorry, I just have no idea what's going on and what I'm supposed to do about it. I'm trained to dust, clean, cook, and sort paperwork. I am so far out of my depth. I'm afraid you're in the hurry up and wait part of things, the worst part of military life, or rather life around the military. A huge chunk of it is rushing hard and fast to be ready as thoroughly and as soon as possible, and then waiting for things to start. We've rushed you out of danger and gotten you to safety. You've hurried up and now you wait, Herbert says with a grin before his and Private Stream's communicators go off. They both check it in an identical and smooth motion that synchronizes them. Their eyes quickly flit over it, and then the sync ends and they start acting like two different people again. All right, so, Herbert starts and is interrupted by Private Stream, who starts talking at the same time. Good now. Private Stream stops himself when he realized he spoke over Herbert, and they quickly gesture at each other for a bit and come to a decision that ends with them giving each other a thumbs up. Good news, everyone, Herbert says. All right, so, things seem to be settled for now, but there's still a few issues in play, Private Stream says, and Amy can't help but snort as they clearly traded off who was going to say what. So you two will stay in protective care, but the bounty that Miss Big was using as a distraction is paid off. Herbert continues. And Miss Big herself is in custody with her escape distraction being disarmed as well. Ladies, Private Stream states. We got her, both say at once. How do you do that? Amy asks. Do what? They ask in the same tone and inflection. Jesus Christ, you boys are in stereo, the man that turned around earlier notes. Hey, Herbert says. Butt out, Private Stream remarks, and he turns a bit to give them both an annoyed look. He then rolls his eyes and turns away entirely. So what are we on the lookout for? Well, there was a plan. We haven't found all parts of that we know about. Until we have that and some confirmation that there's nothing else going to pop up, we're going to keep a close eye on you, Herbert says. That's both of you, by the way. The part we haven't found yet is a second Mindslayer intended for you, Gabriella. You were under our protection from the beginning, but having someone hit with a nightmare like that is making some people considering that you might need to disappear and have a new identity. I beg your pardon. We have another world where we occasionally move people under protective custody too. We have a strong presence there, Herbert says. But the only reason I was woken up was to take care of the company and you can do that from the other side of the galaxy if you need to, Private Stream notes. I see, Amy says, but I mean the only home I've ever known. Oftentimes, you have to choose between comfort and life. This may be one of those times, Herbert states. But haven't we already? Gabriella asks, and Herbert snorts. No, Herbert just states simply. That seems to be the last of them. Chunk notes as he steps around the large pile of unconscious or deactivated women. The squadron of synths was a bit of a surprise. You're not used to fighting robots yet, are you? Kylon asks him. I generally try not to get into fistfights with vending machines. It upsets the brass, he replies. I noticed. You were only able to break and weaken limbs. You don't know how to just shut them off, do you? Most of the synths that myself and the rest of the Undaunted have found have been friendly. No one's come up with a simple trick to stop them. Wasn't there talk about a mother massacre? She was the very big exception. Chunk notes. He had read the status report on that girl. Hell, it was borderline required reading. He hated what he saw. There are ways, Kylon offers. I think I saw what you were doing. An initial pulse into the machine to get its... Cenk begins before Vera, still in war form, nudges against him and rubs against him to try and get an impaled synthetic handoff. Hold on! He grabs the hand and pulls it down and off the oversized tooth. Vera smacks her lips in response and purrs as she nuzzles up against him. I can teach you, Kyawalan says, and he nods. I'd like that. Although, would you mind an audience? Getting some anti-synth tricks into the common Undaunted skill set sounds like a good idea. Certainly, we'll make a show of it. Bring your sister in. I'm not even going to try and deny the relation anymore. Chunk notes, and there's a smirk on Keelan's face, even as Vera shifts back to normal and covers her nakedness by jumping on his back. So does that mean little frosty girl is our daughter then? Or are you denying that? Tut. I think it's up to her. The galaxy plays fast and loose with family relations, especially if I suddenly have a second mother, Chink says as he starts to walk to where Vera first transformed in hopes of finding her clothing there. Not all the galaxy, but enough parts for you to see it, plenty on Centris, Linda says as she walks up with Vera's clothing. Now get dressed, Vera, before I have to write you up for public indecency. We're on private property, which is giving you some leeway. Now cover your girls, Linda scolds her. Before suddenly turning and firing her shock pistol. The electricity illuminates something thin and mechanical that makes no noise as it twitches. Then it's brought to a crunching halt as Kyo Lan is there and crushing something vital in one hand. The shock wave of her movement hits a half a heartbeat later and brushes against everyone's clothing. Why was that one staying hidden? Vera asks even as she slides on her body stocking. A very good question. Better one. Why didn't we sense it until now? It wasn't using Axiom for anything but the lowest power settings. But there was something for just a moment. My weapon's non-lethal, so if I fire wildly, it won't get me in too much trouble. I know this stuff. It's expensive, Kyalan says, pulling out a shard of the material the robot is made out of. As she does, Cenk can suddenly sense it in the Axiom, and his eyebrows go up, very fragile though. What is it? He asks. It's tritite based, but not fully, so its Axiom presence is almost invisible. It slowly adjusts to the image on the other side. Look here, these are color projectors. It's a stealth drone, Kylon says, peeling back more of the outer layer. She then reaches into the central chest of the machine and then suddenly rips her hand back as if she found a snake. There it is. Wretched thing. Yeah, I feel it too. Disgusting. Chunk notes as he senses the Axiom presence very similar to the Veil. I think we found the Mind Slayer.